Yo, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Locked On 49ers Squad Show. I'm your host, Eric Triple E. Engel. You may know me as the former producer for the Murph and Mac Morning Show on KNBR. And today, man, we got a lot to talk about as far as the 49ers versus Raiders preseason matchup on deck. Unfortunately, a lot of off-season and off-field drama continues to loom over this team. The latest, Jed York being arrested. We got to talk about it. No one wants to talk about the off-field stuff this close to the regular season. But it's a distraction potentially for the team.
Hey everyone, I'm Dwayne Boyd, full-time Super Bowl champion, and the 49ers still haven't solidified their left guard position yet. And they have some names, but they don't have the right names. Right now, we're thinking that's one of the weakest parts of the offensive line. Maybe they can go out on the waiver wire and find someone that they could trade for. And, it's tough. Right now, they might be looking in the nearest trailer park for left guard.
And I'm Ayrton Osley, analyst over at the Draft Calculus Substack. And we'll be chatting about some injury news and injury concerns, but hey, some good, some bad.
All that and more coming your way on the 49ers Squad Show, which starts right now.
To all the faithful, it's the 49ers Squad. Everything San Francisco 49ers every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from Levi's Stadium. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. For those faithful to the Bay, the 49ers Squad Show starts now.
Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in to another edition of the Locked On 49ers Squad Show. However you're getting the show on the YouTube channel, or if you're listening on the Locked On 49ers podcast feed, we appreciate you tuning in, and make sure you're subscribed if you aren't already. And today's show is brought to you by KALSHI. For a limited time, download the KALSHI app and use code LOCKEDON to get $10 when you trade $10. So, first of all, today, we'll get into the Jed York stuff a little bit later, as much as we have to. I mean, nobody wants to talk about off-field drama, like I said, this close to the regular season, but it's something that we can't ignore, and we'll get into that as much as we really need to a little bit later on in the show. But I want to start today with, there's a lot of roster movement going on for the 49ers, right? They've cut a lot of players recently. They're trimming the roster down, and you're seeing a little bit more clarity around who's going to start at what position, but you also have these lingering injury issues that are going to play into those decisions. And so currently in the wide receiver room, you got some issues with Mike Evans. You got some issues with Christian Kirk. Not so great news in those camps, but you also have some positives on the other side of that coin. George Kittle and Nick Bosa, some positive updates from Kyle Shanahan on their injury progress. So let's start with the positives, man. Let's start today off on a good foot, and we'll get into the negatives a little bit later. So George Kittle, doing some drills on the sideline, working with the in non-contact drills, but you see him running some routes, making some cuts, which I think is good news with that knee injury. Dwayne, when you're watching George Kittle running routes out there and connecting with Brock Purdy on a few drills, are those good signs? What do you think of his ability to run those routes out there, and does this play into his availability in week one? Are you encouraged by what you've seen?
Well, I'm a little encouraged, but still, he's running routes on the air. Routes on the air is different than running live routes, okay? And for him to go in and think he's going to be full go come the first game of the season against the Rams, I don't think so. I think they might start him, but I wouldn't press him too much. I would put him on a rep count. I wouldn't give him more than 20 plays the game, okay? Or use him on third down, which will still put you at about 20 plays a game. So that's what I would do with him. Right now, they'll probably go with 4 tight ends, I feel like. So that'll be a big plus for the 49ers too when they go down to Melbourne to play the Rams.
Yeah, there's a lot of question marks at that tight end position. They've made a lot of roster moves with some guys at that position as well in these last couple days, but I don't think we're going to see very many starters against the Raiders, obviously, and I wouldn't expect to see George Kittle out there for any of that. He's definitely not going to be out there in the preseason or anything to that nature. But I do think that he's going to be able to be out there week one like you do, Dwayne. I think that seeing him running routes now with the crispness that he's able to with the change of direction, yeah, it's against air, but you can see that he's able to plant that foot with confidence and turn. And I think it's a big hurdle for a lot of guys coming back from these types of injuries. And ultimately, yeah, he's going to need to be able to do that, and then also brace for the contact that's inevitably going to come, because George Kittle, the way he plays football is, there's a high level of contact there. So, Ayrton, my question for you, does George Kittle need to kind of change the way he plays football when he comes back from this injury? Or does George Kittle just need to try to be George Kittle still, and because that's kind of what this team needs from him, and just hope he doesn't get injured again?
I think it's really down to what if I'm putting myself in the coaching staff's shoes, I would think of it more as, let's make it so we don't have to have George try to limit himself and try to, like, this guy has been in the league for almost a decade now, and he's a tremendous competitor, tremendous athlete, tremendous player. And it's like, why would you? I'm of the mindset I wouldn't want him to stop being him. So do as much as you can rather than be like, okay, we'll let you out there, but just don't play like you always do. I think I'd rather just be like, okay, you know what, we're going to limit you. You play second quarter, or we just limit your snaps, and then you can be you. We're going to do it in, a lighter load. I think that might be more effective, just because the player like that, if this was a young guy in his like second or third year coming off an injury, be like, okay, this is someone who's still, for like it or not, probably getting up to speed in the NFL, understanding, potentially a new system. George Kittle's been around for a while. Like, you don't want him to try to, kind of go in and out of his mode that he is as a competitor, as a player. Would be like, okay, yeah, turn it down. All right, now in 3 weeks, going to go about 75% and then 100%. I feel like that might be tough for a player like Kittle to do. So I would say, why not just kind of limit his snap count as much as you can, let him be him, but just do it in a smaller dose as much as possible as he gets back up to speed.
Yeah, I don't think George Kittle has another speed other than 100%. You know what I mean? I don't think he's like capable of playing anything less than what he does. And so that's kind of what I'm getting at here, is that I think we're both of you guys are saying the same thing that I think. Pitch count is going to be super important for George Kittle when he comes back from that injury, hopefully in week one, which he seems on track to do. Shanahan also did say that since he's kind of limited now, that hopefully after those 3 practices, after the mandatory 3 days off, that he will be able to get in a little bit more action and start to ramp up a little bit more. So maybe we'll start to see some contact from George Kittle around that time period, but time will tell. Also, I think good news is that Nick Bosa is progressing. Looks like he's on track to play in week one. So Dwayne, as someone who's been through a similar injury to Nick Bosa, how is he going to be able to manage what's going on as he's working his way back from this knee injury? I mean, how is he going to be able to be effective for the 49ers throughout the entire season? And we've seen, in the past, last year, when you didn't have Nick Bosa in this defensive front, the pass rush just non-existent. And I do think it will be better, even if you don't have Bosa for periods of time this year, than it was last year. But man, is it going to be tough without Nick Bosa. He's the straw that stirs the drink. You can't really replace him. So how's that going to be? What's that going to look like for his injury management throughout the season?
Well, that's a deal that I think that the 49ers are going to have to face. That right now, you can't just put him out there right away and let him start the game and play a lot of snaps. You got to bring him back slow. And bringing him back slow still put him in a position where you want him in passing situations rather than against the run, because you have a lot more chances of getting hurt again in the run game than you do in the passing game. But I think they should put him again. Another guy should be on pitch count. They should bring him back slow, because if they bring him back too quick, he could get hurt again. He's already had that injury twice, and if you get it 3 times, that's pretty much a career. I don't know if they can bring him back from that again. And the thing with them is they have young guys coming out of preseason that show a little bit, so they have someone to play the position for Nick, okay? But right now, you want him in there on the passing down and just see how well he does, because right now, he's been running around on sidelines too. We haven't seen him in pass, so that's a big thing too.
Shanahan did mention in the same time he was talking to the media about Kittle, he also mentioned that hopefully Bosa will get back into practice next week as well. So good signs, and it sounds like really maybe they could. To me, what this kind of sounds like is if for some reason these guys needed to be at practice, like if the season was starting a week earlier or something, that these guys probably, maybe not Kittle, but I think Bosa for sure could have made it work for him to get out there on the field, probably on an even smaller pitch count than what he's going to be on when the regular season starts in Australia in a couple weeks. But I do think that he could have gotten up to speed there. Kittle, maybe not, but ultimately, I think that that if you do have Nick Bosa out there, it makes this defense look a lot better. But like you said, Dwayne, you got all these different guys who have shown you something. Grayson Halton, Romello Height. You got all these different young players, and guys that you brought in the offseason, like Osa Odigizua, who all look to be like different, provide a little bit of a different look. Each one of them has something to give that the other can't really offer. So Ayrton, if Bosa does have to miss some time, what do you expect those defensive fronts to look like? Who fills that void?
I think it's going to be a lot of mixed fronts as far as, kind of leaning in. This could be an opportunity to lean into what Raheem Morris has done in previous stops and give him a little bit more creativity. Because you imagine there'll probably be a lot of 4-down guys. You've got to think of it as, Collins and Odigizua. You got, whatever Michael Williams' status is. You got Keon White, Sam Okwanu's done really well in limited action as well. Grayson Halton's been shining a lot in this preseason. So you'll probably get a decent mix of them, but I could see this being another way as well to kind of get some games and stunts going on up front and bring in a speedy guy like Romello Height just to kind of, you can't necessarily replace Bosa one-on-one. There aren't that many guys who can do that just one for one real quick. So kind of build him, as the saying goes, build him in the aggregate. So it's kind of, I think this could be something where Morris could kind of tap into, some of the different things he's done at prior stops on the defensive line, as a coordinator, as a defensive play caller, and kind of use that, lean into that with some of the varied body types the 49ers have on their defensive line, more in their pass rush overall, that I feel like in recent years hasn't really been the case. It's been a very similar, very consistent type of pass rusher from San Francisco that teams can expect. So kind of lean into the different types, different, bodies that you have, smaller, faster guy like Romello Height, a longer, more powerful guy like Keon White, can work that through and just, I would say expect there to be a decent amount of variety. So not just, sticking just with 4 down, maybe going with those penny fronts we were talking about a lot over the summer.
Yeah, and when he does roll those penny front outs, it allows you to mix and match a whole lot more up front, and you can do a lot of different things, right? Like you can get a power rushing front, you can build a front that just wants to push the middle of that pocket and collapse it. You can build a front with guys like Romello Height on the outside and Jaden Duggar, who are going to come off the edge with a lot of speed. So Dwayne, when you think about all the different combinations that Raheem Morris can create and all the creativity that he can get into, sometimes that's a good thing, right? Like sometimes when you have the right guys to do that, that can be a really, mismatch in favor of the defense. But sometimes it's kind of out of desperation, and it feels like you're, just kind of piecemealing things together, and it doesn't quite, ever really get going to the level that you want your defense to be at if it had all of its main horses like a Nick Bosa. But what do you foresee happening with this 49ers defense? Is this more of a desperation type approach if Raheem Morris does have to do this? Or is this more, something that can give the 49ers an advantage, a competitive advantage on the defensive side of the ball?
Well, competitive advantage would be something that I would look at. It would give them a competitive advantage, but the thing you got to look at too is the veteran aspect of it. How many of those guys is in there that's veterans who understands what Morris is really doing with his defense? Because right now, they haven't had a lot of those guys working together. So it's all new. So they've been working with pretty much the young guys in his scheme. So with his scheme is something that that creates problems for offensive lines and offensive personnel because of the way he mismatch and the way his pressures come in different situations. But the key to that defense, though, is the guy in the middle, the nose guard. He's the guy that's going to protect those linebackers, And do they have that guy on the team that can be that guy? In Tampa Bay, his guy just got paid $30 million plus. So that's a big that's a big push, And I said it last week that, man, that's a lot of money for a nose guard, but he's important in that defensive scheme, and that says a lot when he's in there, taking up three people most of the time. Somebody's going to be free.
Yeah, we can all put the Vita Vea trade rumors to rest officially now. That deal coming through really quickly after we wrapped up our show last week, and I think he's such a good fit there in that Tampa system, like you said, Dwayne, and it's a lineage of really good defensive tackles in Tampa, right? Like him, Warren Sapp. There's been a lot of really, really, really good interior linemen out there in Tampa over the years, and it allows us to finally just focus on the guys who are here instead of constantly looking over. The grass is sometimes not always greener on the other side, right? We talked about this at the end of one of our shows last week. That sometimes you don't need that big name star in the middle of the you don't just need a bunch of big names all over the defense, right? Sometimes you just need guys who do their job. I mean, Bill Belichick was his famous saying, right? Do your job. And there were so many Patriots teams that did not have, ultimate, top tier players at every single position, yet they won all those Super Bowls. And that's because they all fit into the system really, really well, did their jobs. And you can be a very, very, very good, sometimes great team, even if you don't have a ton of those superstar players. So the 49ers, just because you don't have a Vita Vea in the middle and you're going out there with a CJ West and an Alfred Collins and an Osa Digizua, it doesn't necessarily mean that your team's going to be, worse off without a Vita Vea in the middle. So I think that obviously, he would probably be an upgrade over some of those guys for the 49ers, but how big of an upgrade would it be is debatable, right? And so I think that this team has plenty of juice up the middle right now. Like that's not a weak point of this team. I don't think that it matters too much that you didn't go out and upgrade there. If you're going to upgrade, there's other spots that you can look to upgrade for sure. The safety spot, the left guard spot, the offensive line in general. There's a lot of different areas that you could, beef this team up a little bit. I don't think interior defensive line is one of them right now. So you could also probably use a pass rusher if Bosa's not going to be super healthy all season long, right? So we'll see as the 49ers get into their game in Australia against the Rams coming up really soon here, how much they utilize Bosa and what kind of pitch count he's on. And hopefully we get a little more details, as he returns to practice after the mandatory 3 days off. We'll see how things unfold. But ultimately, these are all decently good news things, right? Like the 49ers have a little bit more depth to the point where, Dwayne even is a little bit more, confident in this group, even after the god-awful performance we saw from that group last season. And you got positive news on Kittle and Bosa returning from injury. But on the other side of this coin, Mike Evans back in the news with another injury, and it's another soft tissue injury. It's a groin issue this time. Kyle Shanahan said he's on track to return next week. But Dwayne, that's got to be a little bit unsettling, right? Like this is a guy who was out for a large portion of last season with a hamstring. The hamstring's already been a reoccurring issue for him in the 49ers preseason. And now he's got a groin issue. So, I mean, he's coming into the season kind of banged up. We knew that this was potentially going to be, very likely an issue with Mike Evans. And it's more of just like managing these things as the season goes on. It's not going to be avoidable. So if you're already having to manage it this early on, is that troubling to you? Or is this just kind of like, everyone's got some kind of an issue at this point in the season, no matter what. And he's, a guy who's had a lot of injuries over his career and he's just getting up there in age.
Well, for one thing, yeah, everybody has problems and injuries at this time of year, but he hasn't really done very much to have those problems. And man, they're gonna fly away down to Australia. I'm gonna hook him up to 2 IVs and make sure he gets really hydrated so he can take care of those soft tissue injuries, man. They should keep him wired up the whole time with IVs, trying to get him ready to go. But he, you know, right now, man, it's not. I don't feel very comfortable with him because there's too many things that keep popping up, little things, and I was with Jerry Rice for a long time. Jerry Rice came up to Seattle when he was, almost 40 years old. That guy never missed practice. It's like Jerry Rice. You never heard of Jerry Rice having a soft tissue injury, did you?
Yeah,
Nope.
true.
Yeah. So it's about how you take care of yourself and how well he takes care of himself. Mike Evans must not be very good because he got too many little things keep popping up. Like every week there's something. We can put a crystal in his locker too and give him a nickname.
I mean, maybe he just needs to get on the Jerry Rice and so the Roger Craig. More importantly, he'll run.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Got to put some respect on Roger Craig and running those hills. We can't leave him out in that conversation. But Mike, I know that you're out there somewhere listening to the Locked On 49ers Squad show. I mean, who isn't listening to the Locked On 49ers Squad show? Hit us up, hit Dwayne up. I'm sure he can connect you and get you on the hill running program. We got a lot of good hills to run here in San Francisco, but I digress. We also, even if Evans is injured, there's a lot more depth at the wide receiver position this year than there was last year, right? But a piece of that depth that you thought you were going to have going into the season, Christian Kirk, looks like he's an IR candidate at this point. Kyle Shanahan kind of addressed that with the media the other day. Ayrton, does that concern you at all about the 49ers overall depth at the position? Or have you seen enough from all of these other guys, especially Stribling and the like, in the preseason and in camp, that do you not really think the 49ers even need Christian Kirk right now? We on our last show, we talked about him potentially being a cut candidate even.
Yeah, it's one where I would say he's probably on the line of being a cut candidate. So it's not a huge deal given the depth of what we've seen. Even coming into the season, everyone being healthy, I saw Kirk as a guy who is mainly just going to take on a specific role, like more of a field stretcher guy. That's kind of what he's done, bringing obviously a veteran presence, like he knows how to handle an NFL workload. He's been in multiple offenses. So I wasn't necessarily having super high hopes for him, just kind of like taking on more of a role of a field stretcher, kind of open things up at the wide receiver position. So it was something where there wasn't going to be a lot on him. So that's why I'm not super worried if he ends up on injured reserve. It's something where I'm like, well, the role he was going to have was going to be kind of like a, basically target number. Goodness, I'm trying to do the math here. Like the 6th or 7th guy in the passing, 7th guy you target passing, depending on how you feel about, the tight end depth chart. So it's like, it wasn't exactly going to be super reliable and a super big piece of the passing game for the 49ers. It was more kind of like all right, this is kind of more of a defined role for him. So if he ends up on injured reserve, yeah, I'm not too concerned. And as you said, potentially a cut candidate anyways.
Yeah, I think some people, when they saw the name, kind of expected him to like be, in the mix for wide receiver 3 or something like that. And I don't think that was ever really the plan for Christian Kirk. You know what I mean? I think it was just like you said, a veteran presence to kind of help bring some of the younger pieces on this team along. But you've seen so much from some of these young guys in the preseason. I mean, Cowing as a kick returner and obviously Dejon Stribling has shown you a lot in the preseason as well with his just ability to work his way open and run after the catch a little bit, the strong hands. We've seen him really look pretty good with Brock Purdy, have a connection there. Is there somebody, Dwayne, that on this wide receiver in this wide receiver group that you are expecting to kind of emerge this season, maybe other than Stribling? Because I think we all can agree that he's gonna have to, you know what I mean? Like the way that this offense is looking, the way that with the Ricky Pearsall injury and the roster is just shaken up, Stribling just kind of by default has to emerge a little bit, but there are other guys, Cowing, maybe Watkins makes this roster. There's some, Robinson, some other guys on this in this wide receiver room that are going to have to contribute. So of those remaining guys, Dwayne, who do you think is going to be the one to step up?
Well, I would probably say Watkins would be the guy who would step up. Cowens, we know what he's going to be. He's going to be a return guy. And you're looking at, you hope that Debo get his game back what he had before. If Debo can get his game back, that's going to take a little bit of pressure off of some guys, okay? And it's going to be down to the wire on right now who's going to be that third receiver. And that's the thing, because I don't even know if Evans going to be ready to go for the season one. Right now, Scrivener might be the next guy. Because the game that he's shown so far that, hey, he's improving every game. So I said that he might be in the lineup sooner than you think.
Yeah, might be week one. You know what I mean?
Might be definitely week one.
Yep. And so there's a lot of things still to be decided, but one thing seems for sure, it's the timeline, right? Like everything seems like it's going to kind of have more clarity, not necessarily after this preseason game that they're going to play tomorrow, but after the return to practice, after the 3-day lockout period. So when they are back at practice and we can see Bosa, we can see Kittle getting a little bit more action, and we can see who's getting more reps at certain positions, I think that's going to be the indicator of what's going to happen for this roster in week one. And also, because one thing to consider, because the 49ers are going down there so early, they're going to have to make their roster decisions pretty soon here. I mean, you're going to have to, you're probably going to see the 49ers be the first team, I think, in the NFL to solidify their roster. Now, the Rams taking a little bit of a different approach because they're waiting right up to the last minute to head down to Australia before that game. Gives them a little bit more time, more flexibility with the roster decisions, but less time to adjust and adapt to being down there in Australia. And so you have these two different schools of thought, right? Seems like the Rams are kind of playing the long game. Like even if they're a little bit behind the 8 ball on this first game down in Australia, they might feel comfortable with just kind of solidifying their roster and having more time to decide on that for the rest of the year. Whereas the 49ers are kind of rushing that part a little bit in some of those decisions, but you're going to have an advantage in that week one game, which might be really pivotal come playoff time. So Dwayne, I'm curious, which strategy do you think is the better strategy? Because they both have pros and cons, right? So which one do you think is the better decision? And both these teams, it's worth mentioning, kind of in different fields, right? Like Rams are all in right now. Like they have to win the Super Bowl this year or it's a failed season down there. And the 49ers, I think, are not necessarily quite in that boat, though still trying to hunt for a championship. So which strategy do you think is more beneficial in this situation?
Well, I'm looking at the way the Rams are handling it. Okay, they're going to fly in and take it. They'll fly in, have a few days to get accustomed to being there. But when you go down there for that long a time, with the 49ers are going to be down there, I don't see it as an advantage for them at all. I think with them going like you would if you was playing in England someplace, I would take that approach, okay, rather than to go down and spend a whole week there. So you got players that's, hey, you got young guys, and that's going to get them off track because they're going to be there going to the zoo trying to find a kangaroo somewhere. So hey, I just don't play it. We've been to Japan and we never did that. Okay, we went to Japan like it was a normal long road trip, and we went in there and played. Actually, we played the Rams again, beat them, and got out of town. And that's the way you got to play it. You just got to go in there and try to keep your schedule. Don't go in there and think you're going to be there for a long time. Unpack your apartment and look for a maid and a cook and all of that while you're there. So I would just go there on a normal European trip and not a normal European vacation. It's the thing where, man, you're in town too long. All right. Way too long.
Oh, Looks like we lost Eric.
Yeah, we lost E.
My bad.
Okay.
And yeah, you don't want to get too comfortable down there for too long. And if I can riff for a minute, if you don't want to be looking for the same thing that Jed York was looking for a little bit earlier this week, but we'll move on. The 49ers, the chat brings up a good question here. The 49ers, they're still kind of weak at the O-line position, right? Like there's still some pretty big question marks there, which we're going to get into briefly here or in depth more pretty quickly here on the other side. But should they be looking around after other teams start cutting guys? Should they be looking around to kind of maybe see if they can find a diamond in the rough? Ayrton, do you think there's a team out there that might have like a plethora of offensive linemen that, maybe the 49ers can find something good in?
Yeah, the chat brings up a great point. Looking at the Philadelphia Eagles, I think that's a Rhode Island Niner there is bringing up a great point. That's one reason why I would say I'm kind of more on Dwayne's on this side of things with Dwayne, which is, hey, maybe don't go so early just because you're looking around at your roster and thinking there's some holes. There's some guys where, we could do some self-scouting and keep an eye on cut candidates and who other teams are letting go just because there's an opportunity to go there. It's tough to find extra surplus talent on the offensive line in the NFL, but if there's the spot, it's probably Philadelphia. I mentioned the guy that I really liked a couple years ago in the draft, Cameron Williams. Fred Johnson had some good time and some spot starts there, but just kind of keeping an eye out, just to kind of see what the landscape is and saving some of your major roster decisions or kind of being ready for some of those to come down rather than solidifying them early and getting to Melbourne early could cost you, again, kind of playing, we're talking the Rams playing the long game. That could be a better way to play the long game for the 49ers too, just considering the needs we feel like they have on the roster, sitting here on August 26th.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of rebuilding in a way still, like you're trying to figure out some of these spots, not necessarily just for a short-term solution. You aren't all in this season like the Rams are, right? Like you're hoping that you can have a little more success than you had last year, but I don't think anyone's going to say that this was a failed season if the 49ers don't win a Super Bowl. Obviously, you would like that. That's obviously the goal for every team of this standard at this time of the season. But realistically, I think if the 49ers get back to even the NFC Championship, I think that's a pretty good year for this team. You have a lot of young guys who are just trying to, get better and make, a lot of guys on the bubble just trying to make the roster right now. So I think that you should probably taper expectations this season compared to some years past, but still hope for the 49ers to have some success in the playoffs. You know what I mean? And you want to see the player development. I think that's the big key to this season. You want to see the young guys on this team really take hold of their spots and take ownership of them. And maybe, you have some stars emerge from these guys. Maybe Upton Stout turns into like a really dominant corner in this league. I think that some of those things are on the table for this roster. But ultimately, the 49ers, maybe if they rush some of these decisions, might miss some of those diamonds in the rough. Maybe you want a little bit more time to look at a guy like Enrique Cruz Jr., who's kind of on the bubble for this team. And, he's a big physical specimen. Maybe he's a guy who with some training and some time can turn into a really dominant offensive lineman. But, if you just had a couple more weeks, maybe you'll get a little bit more insight. It's a really thin line to walk here. So I do tend to favor how the Rams are taking this approach rather than the 49ers, because it isn't so imperative for you to win week one, right? Like, you don't need to treat this like it's your Super Bowl, like it's a do or die situation. You got the whole rest of the year to figure stuff out too. But I think you want to take all the time you should in this situation. So ultimately, I'm not so sure I agree with the strategy of heading down there as early as the 49ers are. Or we'll have time to get into all these topics a little bit later on. But right now, we still got to get into some position battles to watch in tomorrow's game against the Raiders. So we'll take a quick break here. On the other side, we got to talk about the left guard battle and the running back 2 battle, because that's going to be really important behind Christian McCaffrey. Later on in the show, we'll still get into the Jed York stuff as much as we have to. We don't, honestly, none of us really want to talk about it. If I'm being totally honest with all of you guys, the 3 of us are pretty damn tired of talking about off-field issues with this team. But this isn't something that we can just ignore. This is something that is, it's in every single national media outlet. It's another off-field distraction for this team to deal with. And at a certain point, those things eventually I think will start permeating that locker room. No matter how tight you are, it's going to be something that you can't block out and totally ignore given the circumstances that have surrounded this team for, months at this point. So we'll get into that as much as we really have to, but we really want to just focus on what you're going to see tomorrow night against the Raiders. That's what's coming up next here on the Locked On 49ers Squad Show. Today's show is brought to you by KALSHI. Before the season even kicks off, everyone's making predictions. Who wins the division? Who makes the playoffs? Who's lifting the trophy at the season's end? On KALSHI, America's #1 prediction market platform, you can trade those predictions in a live market. Will the 49ers qualify for the playoffs this season? I think, personally, they probably will. Right now, the 49ers are trading at 54% probability, meaning a $100 trade would pay out $167.54 if they clinch a playoff spot. Sounds to me like some I'm not going to say free money because there's always risk, but this I wouldn't be thinking that's a too bad of a bet on KALSHI. On KALSHI, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house, and as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position, trade the draft pick, the game, and more on KALSHI. Download the KALSHI app and use code LOCKEDON to get $10 when you trade $10. KALSHI, KALSHI, trade on anything. 18 plus only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. KALSHI products are not available in all jurisdictions. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory. And today's show is also brought to you by Square. Behind so many of the local businesses people visit every day is Square, a platform designed to help businesses sell, manage, and grow. Whether it's a neighborhood coffee shop, a packed sports bar on game day, or your favorite restaurant, Square brings payments, banking, and more together in one connected system. It helps business owners spend less time managing technology and more time focusing on their customers. Square isn't just a payment processor. It's a complete business platform built to simplify the day-to-day. From accepting every major payment method to managing inventory and helping businesses access their earnings faster, Square gives owners the tools they need to run their business with confidence. It's the little things for me, like when a restaurant is slammed, but the staff never looks stressed, or when checkout is so fast, no matter how busy it gets, you're not waiting around, nothing feels chaotic, and it's just organized. That kind of experience usually comes from having Square keeping everything connected in the background. If you're starting a business or running one that deserves better tools, Square helps you sell, manage, and grow without slowing down. Right now, you can get up to $200 off Square hardware at square.com/go/lockedonnfl. That's SQUARE.com/go/lockedonnfl. Run your business smarter with Square. Get started today. Welcome back to the Locked On 49ers Squad Show. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel, joined by Dwayne Board, 4-time Super Bowl champion, and Ayrton Ostley, analyst at Draft Calculus. And guys, we got some position battles to discuss. We got the left guard spot, which Kyle Shanahan did talk about, gave a little bit of insight. We'll get into that in a minute. And you also got the running back 2 battle. I want to start with the running back battle because I'm really, really intrigued to see Jordan James. And Ayrton, how much are you expecting to see him out there tomorrow night?
A lot. I'm expecting to see a healthy helping of Jordan James, especially considering, a trade that went down a little bit earlier between the Saints and the 49ers, sending away running back Zamir White, who, most of us weren't expecting Zamir White to be a active roster mainstay by the time we get to September. But just kind of that signals to me that, hey, they're going to give James a lot of run this week against the Raiders, because we've seen a decent amount from Kalen Black, a lot of good words coming out of the coaching staff and the players about him. So now it's like, all right, it's on you, Jordan. Go run with it. See what you can do against a defense that, hey, we talked about last week how well coached the Chargers defense is, and the 49ers found some good success against them. The Raiders defense a little more wanting, so the stage is set. It's on you.
And I do think that this is a guy who can provide the 49ers with something that no one else in this backfield can, which is a really, really explosive, quick, fast running back who can a true burner, right? And Dwayne, the 49ers lacked speed so severely on this offense last year. Do you think that this guy has a little bit of an inside track just with what he can provide, skill wise that Kalen Black? I mean, no slight against Kalen Black. He's been, I think, really impressive so far this preseason. But given the fact that the Shanahan offense is complicated for rookies to pick up, and there's going to be a lot of expectation, especially in the pass game for whoever's back there, James has one full year ahead of tutelage in this offense that Black doesn't yet have. Do you think he's got the inside track a little bit based on those things and just the sheer speed that he possesses?
Well, I think the sheer speed that gives him an advantage, okay? But as far as being a power runner, he's not a power runner to me. You're looking at James Jordan as a guy who he's going to make the guy miss, but then when he makes a miss, he has the ability to take it to the end zone. So that's one thing that's in his favor is his speed. But you got to give it to Black as a guy who's a physical runner. He just has to learn how to, once he gets through the line of scrimmage, it ain't about trying to run over a guy. It's about trying to evade the guy. And from what I've seen with him earlier, carrying the ball, and he doesn't evade the guys once he doesn't try to evade them once he gets through the line of scrimmage. He needs to learn that because, hey, this is not Indiana, fella. You're in the NFL now. And these DBs and these safeties, they can tackle, and they're coming to hurt you. So you got to learn to protect yourself. So I really think Jordan has the advantage over him right now. But we hope, by mid-season he'll be up to speed where they can put three different guys out there. Maybe they can line two backs up in the backfield at the same time, like we talked about last year, where it gives Shanahan a little bit more advantage when you put two guys out there. You could put Chris McCaffrey and Black out there at the same time. So that's something new. That'll be hard for him for defenses.
You also have Debo in the mix, who will probably get some touches back there as well. I would expect to see some of that from the 49ers. Got a lot of different looks, and I think that ultimately this is a good thing for Christian McCaffrey. He's the guy who's going to benefit from this the most, because you have, realistically, if Jordan James has a good showing today, especially I think if you see him catching some passes out of the backfield, I think that is going to give him the inside track over Kalen Black. But you like what you saw from Black so much that I don't think you're going to be able to keep this guy off the field, because he's going to kind of kick in the door and demand, through his work effort or work ethic and what you see from him, just the explosiveness, the physicality, like you said, Dwayne, that he runs with. It's going to be something that you want to mix in and kind of use as a changeup in this backfield. And ultimately, when you have four different guys back there, and I'm including Deebo Samuel in this, that can all, kind of get some carries, including Christian McCaffrey, Deebo, Black, and Jordan James. Christian McCaffrey's carries have to go down, right, Ayrton? That is the best news that we can probably get for this backfield and how they're looking going into the season.
Yeah, it has to be. It has to be the case. You have to give him just a little bit less of a load.
And ultimately, I think that the 49ers going forward are going to be in a good position if you have all these different things, right? You got the speed guy, you got the power guy, and Christian McCaffrey obviously brings the very versatile set of what he's got. Ultimately, I think the 49ers going to have a very, very, very good, it's a good problem to have back there in the running back position. But on the other side of that coin, the left guard battle, not a very, very good situation there for those guys. I mean, I think that's a little more of just trying to see who's the most serviceable, as opposed to having so many guys at the spot that you can't really pick which one you like the most. So when you look at that left guard battle, and you're kind of looking at what Kyle Shanahan said the other day, which is really that he kind of left Connor Colby out of the conversation. He kind of indicated that they like Pleasance or Jones at the spot, and that Willis is also a guy who's kind of vying for playing time. Connor Colby, the one guy not mentioned, and I'm kind of thinking, after being a guy who was leading this job, job search basically at left guard, he's now kind of a cut candidate. So do you expect Connor Colby to make this roster?
At this point, I don't have a lot of confidence in that. You look at, what the 49ers latest depth chart that they have posted, and kind of what you're seeing depth charts across league sources is, Robert Jones is the starter, Carver Willis behind him. It's like, okay, Colby is the backup at the right guard position, maybe, but also, considering Austin Pleasance may get some run there instead, having played tackle last year, could move him inside a little bit, because he's not needing to fill in on injury duty for Trent Williams. Is that something where, hey, kind of just taking the best player available? Basically, we talk about that in the draft all the time. Just take the best player available. It's like, is our best five without Colby, Jones, or Willis? And at this point, the fact that, Shanahan didn't even mention his name, that is definitely, that my ears perk up at that's the case where, this is the team that has, a decent number of guys that are currently signed to the roster for on the interior, talking Willis, we mentioned earlier, Enrique Cruz Jr. could be kind of moving around. We'll see about that. Brett Toth, Robert Jones, Doug Kramer Jr. You even got Nick Zakelj from a couple of years ago, or quite a few years ago now, a 6th-round pick. So there's just a lot of bodies in the middle there, and this is not a team that's not generally the interior offensive line is not a place you keep a lot of active players on, because you're more concerned, obviously, about the ends with tackle at left and right side. So I'd be surprised if he's not in the discussion for one of the last guys off.
Yeah. And he was a guy that, Dwayne, that you said that you really liked Connor at that spot, and he provided a big run mauler kind of game, and more so than these other guys do. But if it is Jones, Dwayne, how are you feeling about that combo up front? Because he hasn't really had a whole lot of time to gel with these guys. He's missed a few preseason games. He's a newcomer in this team on the offseason or during the offseason. What's your level of confidence there at that position?
Well, right now, my confidence is really not all that high. I'm about mid-level below right now. And right now, at the guard position, it's kind of like a trial by fire, because you don't know who's going to get hot when the season comes around. And right now, we don't have a person that anyone's comfortable with in that position. That's why, Arrington brought it up that, hey, they're going down to Australia too soon, when they can be here looking for somebody that might fall off the waiver wire, and they can pick them up right away, a veteran who can come in and be serviceable at that position. But right now, it's still, I still think Colin Colby is a good run blocker. And that's what's going to be a thing with the 49ers, too. They got to get their run game going, because the run game is what helps the passing game. And if you got a good running game where you can go play action pass, it helps your pass protection, okay? Because it puts the guys in an either-or situation, which is in the favor of the offense, when the defense is thinking, well, are they running or are they throwing? So that's one thing that I see that will help them, is getting that running game going where they can go play action pass, and where Purdy doesn't have to be in what Joe Montana says, Marty ball, which Marty was run the ball on first and second down, then you're in 3rd and long. Okay, you don't want to be in that position. All right, 3rd and long. You want to be 3rd and short. You want to be in 3rd and 1 to 3. You don't want to be there 3rd and 7, because, man, they're coming after you in 3rd and 7, and you got to have your best pass protectors in the game. And right now, even that pass protection at the left guard, I haven't seen no one yet.
And I think that we haven't seen enough of Jones in general, right? Like we have had
exactly
such little time to look at this guy and evaluate, but maybe the coaching staff seems to have, maybe just liked his tape from last time he was healthy, but this was a guy who was injured all of last season, and, starting off this year injured again isn't really filling me with confidence, guys. So we'll see how the 49ers kind of adjust there. Honestly, I think that this is going to be something where Carver Willis takes over about halfway through the season. And Ayrton, we've brought him up all offseason long, and Carver Willis is a guy who is pretty big. I mean, he's got the size for sure to become a big run enforcer, an enforcer in the run game for sure. Do you expect him to take over this spot? And if so, at what point in the season do you think that might be?
I'd say I would I'd imagine he probably does. Kind of looking at just the way he moves and the way he's built is being kind of like one of those. It seems to be a common thing now with college tackles that are just a step too slow. It's like, all right, kick him inside, he'll be an awesome guard for years to come. Coming out of Washington, that was a program that had one of the better offensive lines in college football recently. So he's a solid player. I would say. I'm thinking mid-season would probably be when I would imagine he'd be coming in. Probably, I think get him the first month at least. So maybe looking at, I'm pulling up obviously the schedule right now. I think I would probably be circling for him week 9 home game against the Raiders, November 8th after the bye. In week 9, week 8 bye going into week 9. That could be, you look at the demands for a guy on the interior, lining up next to Trent Williams, who's, fingers crossed, everyone stays as healthy as possible. Taking on Max Crosby and the rest of the Raiders defensive line. That's not, it's Crosby and not a lot of proven other guys. So that could be a better idea than necessarily, something early in the year going against likes of Denver and Seattle. I'd maybe consider Monday night at home against Washington in week 6. That's mid-October. That could be a time for him as well. Get a little extra, because it's a Monday night football game, a little extra time to prepare for the young guy to come in.
Yeah. And when I'm looking ahead, I do think that Colby, maybe it is later on in the season, but honestly, I do have a feeling it could be sooner, just because of the injury to Jones and just because of Pleasance. If he doesn't really click at the spot, I don't think that he's going to be a long-term solution there. And as we said, we saw obvious holes from him last year. There were some good things. It wasn't entirely bad from Austin Pleasance. He did have a couple good games last year, but ultimately, I don't think he's the complete package. And I think Willis, I would kind of keep an eye out on his playing time tomorrow night. I think if he plays a lot in the first half, that might be an indicator. If he plays with, I don't expect most of the starters, maybe any of the starters to play. Maybe you'll see a few, but ultimately you're not going to see a lot of the big names out there. But I would watch for Willis. If he plays a lot in that first half, maybe that's an indicator that, if Jones isn't healthy for week 1, that maybe it's undecided who the number 2 is. And he might be an option for, I think, as early as week 1, potentially, which I don't think is ideal. I think that they probably want Jones back for week 1. And I think that Pleasance ultimately would probably get the nod just based on prior experience in the system. But I think if you see Willis getting some more reps than Pleasance in this game, that's an indicator that spot isn't truly decided yet. So I would keep an eye out on playing time at left guard specifically. Also, similar with Connor Colby, if you see him playing right guard for most of this game, I think that means Connor Colby's cooked, because you got a lot of guys who are cross-trained at both positions, and it's just not I don't think there's a spot for him as just a backup right guard right now on this roster. So ultimately, I think he's the odd man out, and the 49ers, it's not the same as the running back situation where you got all these really good options and it's like you're just spoiled with all these riches and you can't pick which one you want. The left guard, it's just kind of which patch do you think is going to, hold up the longest before, you've got to find like a real solution back there. Maybe Carver Willis can be that real solution. We'll find out going forward. We got to take one quick break here. On the other side, we'll get into the one thing we've kind of been avoiding talking about all show long. Jed York, gets arrested out in Ohio. It's something we got to talk about. It's not something we can just continue to ignore, unfortunately, on the show today. We'll finish up with that and a little bit more on the other side. 49ers make it a trade. We'll also get into that, close the show out with that one, and so we can leave you with a little bit of we'll wash out the bad taste of the Jed York conversation with the trade discussion. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. There are more live events than ever worth seeing right now. Games, concerts, comedy shows, festivals. The hard part usually isn't deciding what you want to attend. It's actually getting the tickets. Between long wait times, confusing checkout processes, and surprise fees. I hate those surprise fees. Buying tickets can sometimes feel harder than it should, but that's why so many fans are turning to Gametime, the app that is built to make buying tickets simple with upfront pricing, seat views before you buy, and exclusive savings opportunities that help you get to the events you want without that usual hassle. My biggest pet peeve is when you think you found a great deal, get all the way to the checkout, and then suddenly, of course, the final price looks completely different. Game Time takes all that guesswork out of the equation. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to every type of event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Welcome back to the Locked On 49ers Squad Show. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel, joined by Dwayne Board, four-time Super Bowl champion, Ayrton Ostley at Draft Calculus. And guys, you know, we have this situation with Jed York where he was soliciting prostitution. We'll call it what it is. Out in Ohio, he responded to an ad 3 times. That was it was a fake ad where, you know, agents were running it behind the scenes. Jed York was arrested, and he was ultimately charged with possession of what was it? Possession of criminal tools and engaging in prostitution. So his charges were later amended to disorderly conduct as part of a plea agreement. He pleaded no contest, paid a little bit over $1,000 in fines, and was sentenced to 1 day in jail for each charge, with 1 day already considered served. So ultimately, it's not something where like Jed York is going to have like super long-term legal lasting repercussions because of this. I'm sure he's got a great lawyer, all those things. I really don't expect much to change operationally for the 49ers at all because of this. But the part about this that, you know, if there is a part that you worry about this, it's the impact of just the amount of drama that has been lingering around this team, right? Like you've had the Brandon Ayuk stuff. You've had multiple seasons where you've had guys, you know, moaning and holding out for contracts in the offseason and trade demands. And now you have this thing with Jed York, and you had the thing with Kyle Shanahan earlier this offseason with him getting in the accident. It's a lot of offseason stuff, man, in one pretty short period of time for one team to continue to block out. And it's one thing, you know, of course, guys like Fred Warner, leaders of this team, are going to sit there and say things like what Fred said, which I'll read you the Fred quote. He said, "We're all aware. We all have social media, so we all see things. But at the same time, I've got a lot of love, a lot of respect for Jed, and I don't feel the need to comment on the situation." I think the team was the same way. It really wasn't a conversation being had in the locker room. That, I think, is the key part of this quote. Yeah, you notice it, but we're so hyper-focused in this building on trying to prepare for week 1. A lot of guys are on the bubble trying to make the team. We're just trying to get better as a football team, and that personal situation, let it stay personal with him. Kyle Shanahan also talked at length with the media about all this, and ultimately, I think this is a kind of an easier thing in a way for the players to block out because it's something that's not happening with a player that you're, you know, hoping is going to be out there on the team. Like Jed York isn't affecting the 49ers day-to-day operations. And like, if Jed York isn't around during the regular season, it's not like that, you know, plays a whole bunch of impact on if they win games or not. I don't think. I mean, there are other things, you know, how he helped, you know, his input on building the roster, willingness to spend, et cetera, et cetera. Those things impact winning. I don't think this situation impacts that at all. But Dwayne, as a guy who, you know, played in the league, of course, guys like Fred Warner are going to say, we're blocking this out. This isn't a distraction. But really, how much can one team, especially in the day of social media, how much can one team really stop those things from penetrating? Because ultimately, you got to just feel kind of exhausted, right?
Yeah, you do. But the thing about it is, it's the leadership of your team, okay? The leaders are the guys that take the team over and take the team where it's got to go. It's not about uh, the people upstairs. It's not about the on the outside. I kind of feel that. You know, the Jed York thing, all they have to do is win, and all of that will get pushed to the side. You won't even know it happened. But you kind of feel like, well, it's a bad time for it to happen at the beginning of the season with that coming up. And, you know, everybody goes through stuff, okay? So Jed is going through something right now. You know, he's in a situation where his wife and him are getting separated. So, hey, everybody has problems, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, it's, you know, Kyle Shanahan and Fred Warner kind of echoed the same sentiment that this is a personal situation and they're going to kind of let Jed deal with it, obviously. And that's kind of what it is, right? Like, he is a public figure, so it makes it a little bit, inevitably just based on who he is, a less personal situation, just something that you just kind of, it's part of the deal. It's part of what you sign up for when you're in the public spotlight and all that. But ultimately, I just don't really think that it's this in particular thing is going to be something that affects the team too much. Ayrton, do you see it differently at all? Like, do you think that this is something that could, if the distractions continue to pile up, do you think this is really something that could start to impact like the culture and togetherness of this team in any way?
I think it crucially depends on who's involved if stuff like this continues. If it's more folks who are closer to the day-to-day as far as what the players are doing, if this is more members, God forbid, more members of the coaching staff, if something happens to some of them, it's like, I know, of course, knocking on every piece of wood I can find in the room I'm in, but, trying to keep that luck away. But if it stays, just as it is, someone as, kind of Jed York is involved, obviously, as an owner, but he's not as involved in the day-to-day. It's not like players may not see him in the locker room every single day. So it's something where it's like, okay, this is all right. It's something that, they're going to be asked about, as Fred Warner handled in a very professional way, as he always does. They're going to get asked questions about it over and over, but I think it could, as long as it stays in that realm, it doesn't snowball anymore. I think it should be okay. But again, kind of just as a fan of the team, as you're watching, you're like, can we just have a normal off season?
Right.
Could we just have something without that drama? And it could just be, honestly, at this point, it's more fodder for fans and media to be kind of like, my goodness, what is going on? Than it is necessarily for like, I don't think Connor Colby's thinking about this right now, and he's trying to figure out how to not get cut.
Exactly.
I don't think I could have phrased that any better. Like, I think we're all kind of tired of this. You know what I mean? Like, I think we're all kind of tired of this. It's like that meme from Holes that's everywhere right now, right? Like, I'm tired of this, Grandpa. That's too damn bad. And keep digging them holes. I mean, keep dealing with all this off-field drama and BS. You know what I mean? Like, I just want football, man. That's where I'm at. I just want football. And soon we will have it, right? Tomorrow night, we get the 49ers Raiders preseason matchup, and we can get back to hopefully just talking about some football. We're going to wrap up the show on the other side. We got to talk really briefly about one last roster move the 49ers made. We kind of mentioned it earlier. We also had a birthday on the show. We got to shout out a certain someone on the show for a happy birthday message. We'll be right back on the other side. Welcome back to the Locked On 49ers Squad show. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel, joined by Dwayne Board, 4-time Super Bowl champion, and Ayrton Osley, analyst at Draft Calculus. And guys, real quick, just to kind of, palate cleanse after that last segment, 49ers, they made a trade. And it, I think, kind of gives us a little bit of insight into, I don't know if they trust their linebackers as much as maybe we thought they did. They traded for Deion Jones. They sent Zamir White to New Orleans. And so, you add some more depth at the linebacker position. Is that what do we think? Like, is that a sign that that maybe Jaden Duggar is not necessarily got as much of a stranglehold on that position as maybe we thought he did, or maybe a guy like Nick Martin might not make this roster? If they're bringing Deion Jones in, I mean, there's clearly a guy that they don't really trust at that spot, right, Dwayne?
Exactly. It's late. It's late in preseason, and now they trading for a linebacker who has some background with the defensive coordinator. That could be a sure sign that somebody is not picking up the scheme like he likes. He wants to have his scheme working at its top when the season starts. So right now, that doesn't look, promising. And then, they signed was it Fico Vita Vea's cousin, who went to St. Francis and San Jose State. They brought him in late too in the season, signed him just a couple of days ago or yesterday. So
yeah, they didn't. And if you're looking into if you're reading the tea leaves, Ayrton, who do you think is the odd man out now that Deion Jones is in here, or is this just kind of like a guy to help them get through the last preseason game sort of deal?
I think it's more a guy to help him get through the last preseason game. But I mean, if it is going to impact anyone, I feel it's got to be Nick Martin at this point.
Yeah.
Like, because there's enough buzz around Dunker that they'll want to keep him around no matter what. Tatum Bethune's proven well enough in spot starts that he's doing well. You look at Dre Greenlaw, Fred Horner, they're not going anywhere. So it looking down the line, I'd say it's down to Nick Martin, and obviously Luke Gifford, and Garrett Wallow, veterans that played well when called upon in big moments, especially in the playoffs last year. So they could see some contention to their roster security, but honestly, I think this is just a hedge to get through the games, at least to get through Thursday's game, but definitely a red flag for Nick Martin. That's the first person I thought of.
Yeah, I think we're in the same boat there, man. Ultimately, we'll see what happens. 49ers going to have a lot of roster moves in the coming days. For us, that's all the time we got today to get into here on the Locked On 49er Squad show. A lot of things that we got into today. And ultimately, I think we're just all really excited to get back to real regular season football after this preseason game tomorrow against the Raiders. You'll see the Raiders twice this year, so maybe a little bit of insight to be gained. I wonder if I'm kind of excited. Hopefully we get to see some Fernando Mendoza action. I think that he's going to be a fun guy to watch. You'll get to see probably his former teammate, Kalen Black, getting some reps against, the Indiana on Indiana battle, all those kind of storylines. We'll get into all that after tomorrow's game. We'll be coming to you live with a pregame show, or a postgame show rather, after that one concludes here on the Locked On 49ers podcast and on the Locked On 49ers YouTube channel. So make sure you're tuning in, make sure you're subscribed. Shout out to all our everydayers. Until next time, I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel, for Dwayne Board, for Ayrton Ostley. Real quick, I almost forgot. You almost let me forget. Happy birthday to Ayrton. It's he celebrated this past weekend. Did you do anything fun, buddy? Anything special for the birthday?
Went out in the park, hung out, enjoyed some sunny San Francisco Sunday, which felt weird in August. Usually waiting for that September, October, maybe. And then got some Puerto Rican food, and couldn't ask for a better, more relaxing day.
Nice. Where'd you go? Shout it out.
I went to Parada 22 in the Haight. Love that spot.
Ooh. Yeah, dude. Eric can confirm. Really good spot. If you're looking for Puerto Rican food, the mofongo there. Oh man, that thing it hits. Make sure you go check them out. That's all the time we got for you guys today here on the Locked On 49er Squad show. We'll see you next time. Peace.